Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are plunging straight into the technological core of modern finance. Our mission is to really analyze the technologies driving this fourth industrial revolution. We're talking cloud, big data, automation,
Right.
and more importantly, how they are fundamentally rewriting the job description for finance professionals. We've got a dense stack of material here, all centered on how technology creates and, well, preserves value.
And it's so much more than just a list of new tools, isn't it? It's a complete paradigm shift.
100%.
The expectation for finance is changing, and it's changing fast. The tech has automated a lot of the assembly work, the routine reporting.
Grunt work.
Exactly, and that forces every single finance professional, you listening to this, to pivot. You have to move into these high-value areas. Deep analysis, strategic advising, applying real impact. If you're not fluent in these technologies, you really do risk being left behind.
Absolutely. The machines handle the data entry, the manipulation. Our time has to be focused on interpretation and strategy. So let's start with the foundation, the architecture that makes all of this even possible.
Systems and specifically the cloud.
Exactly. You can't have big data or any advanced analytics without a scalable infrastructure. It just doesn't work.
Right.
When we talk about cloud computing, I like to use an analogy. Think of it as moving away from a localized private server room. That's like your own private library where you own every single book and bookshelf.
Okay.
You're moving from that to a utility model.
Yeah.
It's the difference between owning your own private power plant and just, plugging into the city grid.
And that shift immediately changes the financial discussion.
Yeah.
On one hand, the benefits are just massive. You get scalability, you get speed of deployment.
And the big one.
And the big one, yeah. The shift from huge upfront capital expenditure, CapEx, to a predictable operational expenditure, OpEx. That alone changes budgeting and asset management completely.
But the risks are complex. I mean, you're not managing a physical building anymore. You're managing governance, control, partnerships. So what are the key architectural risks that the finance function now has to quantify?
Well, I'd say there are three main areas. First is just data security. You're trusting a third party with incredibly sensitive information.
Right.
So their vulnerabilities are now your vulnerabilities. Second, something called data sovereignty. Where is your data physically stored? And what country's laws govern it? That's a huge deal.
That's a massive deal.
And third is the complexity of the system architecture itself. I mean, most big organizations, they're not just on one cloud. They use a mix.
A hybrid model.
A hybrid model, yeah. Public clouds like AWS or Azure, private clouds hosted internally, and finance needs absolute assurance that the information flowing between all these systems is controlled and, crucially, auditable. We are responsible for preserving value, and a failure in any of those areas. It's a direct, quantifiable financial loss.
That makes perfect sense. So if the cloud is the vehicle, what's the fuel?
Big data.
Big data, of course. Our sources define it really powerfully. It's not just our regular enterprise data anymore. It's all these new types of data, internal, external, often unstructured, that give us insights we just couldn't access before.
And managing it is often boiled down to the V's, right? Volume, velocity, variety, and veracity.
And for the accountant, I'm going to argue that veracity, the truthfulness, the integrity of the data is the only one that really, truly matters.
Okay, let's dig into that. Why veracity above the others?
Yeah.
We know finance reports have to be accurate. Our sources even use that mnemonic, accurate, where A stands for. Oh, accurate.
Right. Figures add up. Rounding is correct. No ambiguity.
So why is getting that reliability so much harder now?
It's because the sheer volume and the velocity of the information are actively working against our ability to manually check it. It's that simple. In the old days, we dealt with structured internal data.
Clean ledgers.
Clean ledgers. Achieving accuracy was, relatively straightforward. But now we're pulling in these massive, messy streams of unstructured data, social media sentiment, sensor readings from a factory floor, emails.
And we have to decide almost instantly if that input is reliable enough to base a major financial forecast on.
Exactly. So veracity is critical because the finance function is the organization's trusted steward. If the input data lacks integrity, that output, the management information, the financial reports, it's just garbage.
Garbage in, garbage out. It all goes back to the value matrix for finance. Our core job is stewardship and maintaining data integrity. flawed inputs completely negate all the sophisticated analysis you do later.
It's the non-negotiable foundation for every single step that follows.
Okay, so once we trust the data, the next step is obviously to analyze it. Let's talk about that analytical evolution.
Right. The purpose of data analytics is to draw out patterns, provide relevant insights, and move us from just compiling numbers to actually interpreting them.
Which takes us up the analytics ladder. The bottom rungs are, descriptive what happened and then diagnostic why it happened. Most companies are now spending a lot of time on predictive analytics.
What might happen? Forecasting sales, estimating credit risk, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But if the goal is to truly maximize value, we have to aim higher. We need to be able to influence the future, not just predict it.
And that points us to the very top of the ladder, prescriptive analytics.
So is that the ultimate goal for the modern finance function? The ability to do prescriptive analytics?
I think it has to be. A predictive model tells you, based on current trends, your working capital deficit will hit $50 million next quarter. That's useful.
Okay, yeah, that's useful information.
But prescriptive analytics goes further. It tells you the optimal actions to take right now, increase collections from these specific clients, delay this investment, adjust inventory levels by this much to keep that deficit below $20 million.
That sounds amazing, but it also sounds a bit like a perfect crystal ball. I mean, how do we as finance professionals justify investing in a system that tells managers what they should do instead of just giving them a good prediction?
Because it moves the finance function from being a historian to a genuine strategic partner. These prescriptive models provide critical, quantifiable input for planning, for sophisticated forecasting, and for effective resource allocation.
It connects the financial levers directly to the strategic goals.
Precisely. If a model predicts a supply chain disruption will hit your profit margin, prescriptive analytics can recommend the optimal mix of alternative suppliers and the exact hedging strategy you need to maintain your target. That is tangible value creation.
That link to real-time resource allocation makes me think about the Internet of Things, IoT. IoT is just throwing off massive amounts of real-time operational data. How does that flood of data practically change the elements we're collating for, say, a traditional balance sheet?
Oh, it dramatically increases the complexity of things like asset tracking and inventory valuation. Historically, finance would rely on, what? Periodic inventory counts.
Yeah.
Fixed depreciation schedules.
Year-end stock take, yeah.
Right. With IoT, you have sensors on equipment, GPS on the supply chain, smart warehouse systems. You get continuous real-time data on an asset's location, its condition, its usage.
So we're not waiting for the warehouse manager's report anymore. We're getting instantaneous data on physical asset use and deterioration.
Exactly. And this forces finance to collect, clean, and connect much higher volumes of this instant operational data. It also opens the door to more accurate valuation models like usage-based depreciation. It brings the financial ledger much, much closer to the physical operational reality.
Which leads us right into the next phase. How do you manage all that data efficiently?
With all that raw data pouring in from IoT and sitting in the cloud, the next logical step isn't just analysis, it's automation. So let's talk about robotic process automation, RPA.
I like the way the source material frames this, not as replacement, but as creating a digital workforce or a digital assistant.
I do too. That digital assistant handles all the routine, repetitive, high-volume tasks that, frankly, used to eat up all the time of junior and mid-level accountants.
We're talking journal entries, invoice processing.
Three-way matching, bank recs, generating standard compliance reports. RPA is brilliant at those structured, rules-based activities.
Okay, but if automation is hitting roles all the way from financial reporting to internal audit, the structure of the finance team itself must be changing dramatically. The sources talk about a flattening of the traditional hierarchy.
It has to change. That traditional pyramid with a wide base of people doing transactional processing, it gets flatter. Maybe it becomes more of a diamond or an hourglass shape.
So those entry-level processing roles are minimized.
They're minimized, yeah.
Yeah.
The staff that remain, especially mid-level and senior staff, they must have higher-level skills in data governance, process design, systems oversight, and, of course, analytical interpretation.
So RPA's purpose isn't replacement. It's augmentation.
It is pure augmentation. It frees up our finance people for those higher level activities we keep talking about, value analysis and value enabling. Instead of spending 3 days reconciling accounts, that person now spends 3 days advising the CEO on a new capital deployment strategy based on insights the automated system gave them.
It just accelerates that transition from scorekeeper to strategic advisor.
It really does. Now let's pivot to a technology that speaks purely to accountability and control.
Blockchain.
Blockchain. The sources frame it as a decentralized technology that boosts what they call technological connectedness.
So given that finance has these vital roles in control and stewardship, how could blockchain's core mechanism, creating a single version of the truth, how could that actually change or maybe even partially replace traditional auditing?
This changes the entire game. I mean, traditional auditing relies so heavily on sampling and on transactional verification, going back and checking that recorded transactions are accurate and authorized.
Right, pulling invoices.
Pulling invoices, yeah. But if a transaction is recorded on an authorized blockchain, its immutability and its transparency are inherent. They're cryptographically secured. The transaction is basically considered verifiable at the moment it's recorded.
So the auditor's focus, it shifts.
It shifts completely. Instead of spending weeks verifying thousands of individual entries, they spend their time focusing on the control points around the blockchain system itself.
So they're auditing the system, not the transactions.
Exactly. They're assessing the design of the smart contracts, validating the consensus mechanism, making sure the access controls are solid.
And that must strengthen the internal control environment massively. It reduces the need for all that post-mortem transactional review.
It does. Now, it won't replace auditors entirely. Judgment and interpretation are still essential, but it certainly allows assurance providers to focus their efforts much higher up the control chain. It leads to a far more efficient audit.
Okay, so this whole integrated digital system, cloud, big data, RPA, blockchain, it's incredibly powerful, but it also comes with immense responsibility.
Which brings us to our final area, the ethical side of this. Data protection, privacy, and this concept of corporate digital responsibility.
It's easy for companies to silo this, isn't it? To see data protection as purely an IT issue or maybe a legal compliance issue, but the finance function is explicitly named in this process.
And for a very good reason. Why is finance specifically on the hook for protecting these tech assets, even when IT is managing the actual infrastructure?
Because, and we come back to this again, the core mandate of finance is to create and preserve value.
Right.
In the 21st century, information systems and the vast amounts of data they hold. These are organizational assets. Sometimes they're the most valuable assets.
Right question.
A single data breach, a privacy violation, it can lead to enormous regulatory fines, huge reputational damage, and quantifiable financial losses. Therefore, the finance function's stewardship role extends directly to being a guardian of the organization's information and its systems. They have to partner with IT to manage those risks and those costs.
So what really stands out to me is just how deeply integrated all of these technologies are. You can't implement sophisticated prescriptive analytics without the huge continuous data input from IoT.
And you can't manage that volume of data without the scalable backbone of the cloud.
It's a stack. Each piece relies on the others.
Absolutely. Yeah. The digital world has irreversibly altered the finance professional's trajectory. Technology is handling the assemble work and a lot of the analyse work. The real irreplaceable value, it now lies in the advise and apply roles.
That's the function of modern finance, leveraging this tech stack to create and preserve value through strategic insight.
Right.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you navigate this? We started this deep dive by stressing the importance of data quality veracity. The greatest challenge for the next generation finance professional isn't wrestling with the sheer quantity of information. The cloud can handle the volume.
The challenge is mastering the quality of that information. Ensuring data integrity, making sure the data is reliable, it's accurate, it's truthful, that has to be the primary continuous focus. Especially as all these unstructured data sources just continue to explode. All the sophisticated analytics, all the strategic insights, all the value you create, it all rests on that one foundation of trustworthy data.
So if you can't verify the veracity,
you can't trust the outcome. The finance professional who can master and guarantee data quality will be the one driving strategic decisions for decades to come.